the Mudroom. If you missed part one, there's a link or a button or something to click on. They'll just find it. I'm sure you'll find it. You're probably better at YouTube than I am. While I'm building the face frames for the cabinets, I'm going to get this area prepped so that as soon as they're done, we can do the install. And that means ripping everything out, this lousy red shelf, the sink, most importantly, the tiles. I don't even really know what's behind them. Once we get them out, we're probably going to have like a rough wall that I'm going to have to smooth out so that the new tiles will go on nice and flat. But for now, let's start with the demo. Once the trap is removed, you'll want to cover up that pipe to keep sewer gas from leaking into the room. The existing tile is gone, but as you can see, I've taken a few chunks out of the wall. Not the end of the world, to be expected, and we can smooth that out. Now the good news is, most of it's going to be covered by the lower cabinet anyways. All we're going to see is a very thin strip along the edge here, and this part here will be covered by the new tile, but we want it to be flat to start with so that tile goes on properly. Now I'm going to start down here where we can't see because I've never done this before. So I'm going to make all my mistakes, first of all, in the basement, but even better, I'm going to make them all behind the cabinet. I'm going to learn how to do this right back here because we'll never ever see it. Nou, natuurlijk bin ich kein Profi. Ich habe noch nie gemacht, aber jemand hat gesagt, ich soll Goldband benutzen. Und so, wir probieren zusammen. Los geht's. Well, looks like Michelangelo can sleep tight tonight, but all things being equal, this could have been terribler. Pretty flat, a few bumps here and there, which I can smooth out with the sandpaper. Probably going to be a part 2 though. I'm going to have to add a little bit in this area here just so we get a nice flat surface for when the new tile goes down. We've hit a bit of a snag. I would like to install an electrical outlet, Steckdose, here between the countertop and the upper cabinet. And normally you would take this wire and just fish it down the wall and do the simple install, but we're in Germany. So that means I need to drill a hole in the wall and insert one of these Unterputzdose in here and then cut a channel down the wall for the cable to run in, cover that with plaster, which will then be covered by tile, and I can install the outlet in here. Now, I'm going to go to all that trouble to do that. I may as well install 2 side by side and have multiple outlets. I've never done this before, so fingers crossed. My only real concern is avoiding drilling into any water pipes that might be in the wall. But I'm told they should be down low, so I guess we're good to go here. This part is going to create an awful lot of dust. Always wear a mask, and whenever possible, put your camera outside and shoot through the window. Well, that was about 100 times easier than it should have been. A little boring. Holes drilled, trench cut, cables long enough. That never happens. And most importantly, the basement is not filled with water. So now we're going to mix up some of that Goldband and get these cemented in. All right, it's coming together. We've got the cable cemented into the wall, the Unterputzdose installed, and they're cemented in nice and tight. Electrical cans in English, I actually don't know what they're called. Cable running through. I'm going to wire these in series. I thought I would do it in parallel, but evidently not. Second cable is going to run into the cabinet, and I'm going to have a Steckdose, an outlet inside there. Before I paint the interior of the cabinets and hang them on the wall, I want to see if they fit. Now remember way back in the stretcher or the nailer, I cut a 45 just in case? Well, here's where I earned the big money. I installed a French cleat on the wall, le taquet français, maybe. And this is so I can hang it on the wall by myself and get it in a reasonable place so that I can anchor it securely into the wall. Quick check for level. And all right, Hamilton. While this cabinet is securely fastened to the wall, I'm going to grab the second one and just hold it up to make sure I have everything dialed in correctly. Spoiler alert, I already did that and it fits perfectly. We need to mark out some holes for where we're going to screw the cabinets to the wall. Even though they're on the inside and will be covered by the doors, I still like them to be laid out neatly. Evidently, I'm not good enough to have one of those fancy countersink drill bits. I like using pocket holes, and usually they're pretty well hidden, and this project is no exception. This is the underside of the upper cabinet. It's going to hang about this height, and the face frame will come down and cover, so we're not going to see in. The only way you're going to see these pocket holes is if you get down nice and low and look for them. And even then, I'm not too worried about it. However, I'm going to know they're there, and so I want to plug them. You've done all this work building these cabinets, why not go that one little extra step? So it's pretty easy. You can pick up some doweling from the hardware store, make your own plugs, and on a paint grade project like this, you will never know they're there. I put a little pencil mark on the surface of the table saw just so I can quickly line up the dowels. Precision is not super important on this one, just get them cut close. And then just a quick pass on the sander to remove any burrs. Throw some glue around and then lightly tap the plugs in. But don't pound them. You don't want to split the holes right open. Make sure they go past the top lip and sit flush with the bottom. Once they're dry, cut them flush. I don't have a proper flush cut saw, but this one does the trick. I'd rather leave a little extra on the plug than accidentally cut into the plywood. A quick pass with the sander will finish the job. My fancy little LED puck lights have arrived. These are the ones that are going to go underneath the upper cabinets. You'll remember I left that little recess so that the face frame will cover them. We're not going to see them shining down. We are, however, going to see the cables. Even though they're going to be mounted rather flush to the bottom, there's going to be 3 of them. And I just would like to avoid that. In the future, when I build my kitchen, I think I'll build a false bottom for everything to live in and you won't see a thing. But that seems a little bit overkill for the mudroom. So I'm just going to fashion a very simple skirt. I'll make it nice and low profile, just enough to obscure all the extra wires from sight. And I'm going to do that now before it's on the wall. It's going to be a lot easier to fit while it's down here on the ground. Once the skirt is cut to size, add the small channels for the wires to pass through. Your capsega likely has a stop gauge on it. You can dial in the depth with the knob, and 2 cuts should do the trick. I didn't think you wanted to watch me paint, so just a quick note. I use a foam roller and thin out the acrylic with a little bit of water, so it goes on smooth. I lay a light in the center of each of the cabinets and screw them in. The lighting package I bought happened to come with 3 lights. And here's where I made a small mistake. The light being offset isn't terrible, but this is why I started in the basement. With the lights in place, I screw down the skirt. Don't glue this. We might have to remove it down the road. I marked the wall through the existing holes so I can precisely drill out the larger ones we're going to need for mounting. Remove the cabinet, drill out the holes, and add a double. Is that anchor in English? Pop the cabinet back on the wall and sink the screws into the doubles. They should line up perfectly. Upper cabinets installed, nice and secure to the wall, screwed to each other so they're not going anywhere. Relatively straight. I say relatively, they're actually perfectly level. But as to be expected, the basement in my house is not perfectly straight and level, not all 90s, which is why I made these in 2 separate cabinets so that I could mitigate any imperfections that are going to develop over a longer stretch. The lighting installed, we need to hide these wires next. We're going to hide those in behind this little skirt that I designed, which is all going to be covered by the face frame. Now you can see the face frame not in place yet. That's because I wanted to use it to cover up this little gap between the wall and the cabinet. In order to do that, I mounted the cabinets first so I can build the frame to a very specific size. And I wanted to install all of the upper cabinets first before the lower cabinets so that I had room to work. Once the lower cabinet's in place, it's a little more difficult to get in behind. Next step is to hide all these wires. Time to install the lower cabinet. Now normally you'd make some sort of a toe kick plate, hover platform, something fancy to keep the cabinet up off the ground. But considering that this is an actual mudroom with a drain in the floor, my kids will be bringing snow-covered toboggans in here, my ice skates will be drying, I expect there to be a fair amount of moisture on the floor. And so I want to keep the cabinet up off the ground to avoid any damage from the water. So the way we're going to do that is the back, we're going to hold it up with a scrap piece of plywood, just screwed to the wall as a cleat. And in the front, we're going to use a couple of these leveler legs. And I will cover these with a plywood skirt at the very end. That way, if there is any damage, I only need to replace the one piece. Now, it's relatively important that this be the correct height. So we can simply measure our feet, but that assumes our floor is perfectly level, which I assure you, it is not. So I'm going to tack a leg to one end of the cleat, take it to the wall, get it level, and that mark should give us the exact height that we need. I want to replicate the final position for the leg, so I measure the depth of the cabinet and then set the leg in a little bit to accommodate the skirt. Set the foot in a neutral position before you measure. This gives you flexibility to adjust up or down later on. I've pre-drilled the screw holes on the cleat, and then I marked the first one with the drill bit. Attach it with a screw so it's firm, but not all the way in. This allows me to adjust to level. Mark the second hole, slide the cleat out of the way, and drill for the double. It's difficult to line up the hole by sight, so throw the level back on and you're all set. Now secure both screws. The feet will be hidden by the skirt, so their placement doesn't need to be exact, but I measure anyway. Yeah, I know. We need a hole in the backing for the drain pipe to fit through. Unfortunately, it is slightly larger than my hole cutter, so I have to make do with multiple cuts and then a cleanup with the jigsaw. I rest the lower cabinet on the cleat and the newly attached front legs and align the right edge with the uppers. Normally I would have pre-drilled the screw holes, but I want to make sure I'm not drilling through any pipes. So I drill through the cabinet and into the wall to mark for the doubles. I make sure to put a few marks on the wall and the cabinet to make realignment easy later. Finally, secure the cabinet to the wall. And it's coming together. Thanks for watching. Next episode, we're going to make some face frames, some doors, and some drawers. Stay tuned? No, that didn't, question? Should we do it? No? That's it. Cut, I guess.